That's right. It is time to talk just a little bit about the DNC, because when you get a gift that keeps on giving, you might as well use it. All this and more on the Self-Evident Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Self-Evident Podcast. You got Mike. I am going to be the man in the chair today. Massey's got some work stuff he's got to do, but this is going to be fun. I've been watching this with interest, and this is good stuff. And you're going to enjoy it. Now, if you're listening, I will warn you there are some clips and stuff that just won't make a whole lot of sense, but I will do my best to explain to you what is going on. This whole event is kind of what you would expect from the Democrats. Now, people are rightly pointing out that the Republican one was pretty much a snoozer, and I'm not even going to argue with that. This one, a little bit more like a party, all of that, which expected. But you kind of wonder, like, okay, what are you guys going for? And we all know, and they've proved that. And what I found fascinating, I'm going to throw this right out there at the beginning, is how much Trump's name comes up. It is though you are obsessed with Trump. Every single speaker, every delegate seems to be talking about Trump. Trump. And you've actually seen those. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. There are compilations out there of all the times that Trump's name is said at this whole thing. And it's funny because in the RNC, that one happened, I think, Biden's name came up a couple of times, twice maybe. And so they were focused forward. This one seems to be, no, we're focused on Trump and how evil and awful and horrible he is, which Kamala Harris still hasn't posted a real policy plan. And the platform that they're using for the DNC, it actually still mentions Biden's name. So there seems to be this miss of giving out their policies. And there's a reason for that. They're intentionally being vague. Now, of course, the things that have come out, we've heard about. Maybe you've heard about them, maybe you haven't. Stuff is like $25,000 to first-time home buyers and 28% corporate tax rate and taxing unrealized gains. Of course, it's only for those with $100 million or more, so you don't have to worry about those unrealized gains because taxes always stay to that single small tiny group that they tell you about. You know, the income tax was only supposed to be 1%, and it quickly devolves from there. And what people are rightly pointing out is there seems to be price controls, because that works out well. And so you're watching this unfold right now, and we're going to be getting into some of the clips. There was one thing that I wanted to point out before we get into those clips is they had Biden speak on the first night. Now, it wasn't primetime slot. Typically in media tries to adhere more to the East Coast as opposed to the West Coast in terms of time slots and primetime and all of that. He was slated to go on at about 10:30, give or take, 10:30, 10:40. He didn't end up going on until after 11:30 Eastern. And a Biden aide actually texted Axios reporter Alex Thompson and said, "This is awful. He literally set up a campaign and handed it over to them. Do they have to cut him out of prime time?" And what most people are pointing out and recognizing is there seems to have been this slight against Biden of like, okay, yeah, he passed it off to Kamala. He's a great guy. Get out of here. And he literally got out of there. He flew out right after he was done. And he seemed angry in his speech. And I'm not going to cover his speech because it was kind of like, well, this is all expected. They punted him out the door and closed it behind him, and they went on with their party. And of course, you had the typical, Obama, the best choice I ever made was Joe Biden as vice president. Yeah, you never wanted to be in the same room as him. Or you had Clinton, who compared him to George Washington because he voluntarily gave up power. Yeah. Yeah. Do with that what thou wilt. But there are some very interesting events that happened at this whole thing. Before I cover those, do not forget, we have our fundraising drive going on. Our goal is $30,000. We've been chopping away at that tree, and we're thankful to you guys for those who are stepping up and helping us out. Help us get that number for the end of the year, so that way, we can set ourselves up to do some cool things at the beginning of the year. And by all means, you can go to theselfevidenttruth.com. You can donate, click that donate button. You can become a monthly torchbearer and help us get to areas around the nation. And like we always say, we do not turn somebody down because they can't pay us enough to come out. We will do what we need to do to get there. Doesn't matter if it's 3, doesn't matter if it's 3,000. We want to be there to really give the gospel. We talk a lot about cultural stuff. We talk a lot about politics. We talk a lot about history. But at the end of the day, when we're standing face to face with people, we want them growing in their faith. We want them growing as a Christian. We want them to get saved. This stuff is because it's relevant. It's relevant from a historical perspective, a Christian perspective. And I will admit today, dude, I want to just have some fun. I want to laugh a little bit. So I hope you guys are going to stick with me and laugh with me. Go ahead and let me know where you're from. If you got any questions, anything you want to say, by all means, post it up in the chat. But I think we're ready. I think we're ready to get this started. So first off, first video, walls are racist. You knew that, right? Unless, of course, it's the DNC. And, of course, IDs are racist. You can't ID people. That's access problems. Because, after all, according to the Democrats, black people can't get IDs. But, sure enough, they built walls. The only problem is they're not very good at building walls. If you notice, that wall got broken down. And these Palestinian protesters are absolutely causing havoc for the Democrats. They're filtering in everywhere. They're rocking stuff around. They're causing trouble because guess what? They're upset. It got taken from them. And there are plenty of people in this whole DNC thing that are hitting the divisive line. And when you watch, especially these Palestinian protesters, isn't it funny that you'll see pictures and videos of U-Hauls lined up and thousands of professionally printed signs and food and water and hotels and airfare covered and organizers and volunteers for this whole thing. And you kind of wonder, where's that money coming from? Where's it coming from? Now, down in Texas, there are reports of organizations setting up shop outside DMVs, helping illegals get IDs and get registered to vote. And you've got this system that doesn't talk a whole lot, but does a whole lot in terms of money gets funneled to these organizations, and these organizations set up shop to move this stuff forward. Now, you may say illegals, Palestinian protesters are two different things. Yes and no. They're two prongs of an attack. And with these Palestinian protesters, doesn't it look strangely like some of the color revolutions we've seen around the world? Doesn't it just kind of reek of like a mass coordinated effort? And when we see U-Hauls lined up down the street and we see thousands of professionally printed signs and food and water, and do you remember pallets of bricks during the Summer of Love? It's almost as though somebody else is funding it, which is very interesting that you're watching a behind-the-scenes battle seeming to go on. Now, the walls and all of that, that's entertaining to us on the conservative side because we're raising our hand going, man, you guys complain about walls and how racist they are and we can't build walls to keep people out. Yet here you are keeping people out because they're elites. And if you look at how a tyrannical system entrenches itself, it blocks off the common man, separates itself out, brings in foreigners in mass because the foreigners are more loyal to the ones that are giving them stuff than the ones who are standing next to them. And they create this buffer zone of physical and space with people. And there are plenty of people that are putting up on TikTok and X how upset they are that they're noticing that illegals are getting full cash cards. They're getting paid. And the protesters are the same way. It's money flowing into the system to cause upheaval. Now, that upheaval, everybody was talking about, boy, this is in Chicago. And there was a convention in Chicago, what was it, late 60s, that went outrageous. And so now people had boarded up their stores and their businesses in preparation for a political convention. Let's roll that.
Given the uncertainty surrounding next week's convention, businesses are taking steps to prevent potential threats to their property, like looting or vandalism, by adding protection.
We've had
Listen to this guy.
Zero indication that there would be any protections down in the loop.
We had zero indication there would be any protection. It was like nobody talked to us and told us, hey, we're going to organize, we're going to make sure nothing happens. So this business did what they were supposed to do. They tried to protect their business. That's the disdain they have for you. These elites have such disdain for you. And there was actually a Chicago city councilman who was doing an interview and talking about kind of the disgruntled nature of the people on the ground and the way he was feeling towards the higher ups in the party. They don't care about you. They really don't. They care about the people that they're bussing in, that they're bringing in, that they're coordinating, because that's their next voter base. That's their own personal army against the people who are disgruntled because they never cared about you in the first place. They used you. And a lot of times conservatives will look at, say, people in the black community and go, they're using you because they know you'll vote for them. And yet the votes keep happening. Now, what's cool is there's a lot of man on the street stuff going on, especially in the black community, where it's like they're fed up and they see what's going on with Trump. And it's like, nah, Trump, man, he did more for us than they ever did. And when you look at Kamala Harris, fake. Come on, the laugh, it's fake. And there's everything they spout to you is fake. Oh, we care about freedom and she's going to fight for you and fight for the middle class. That's funny because every time you fight for me, I lose money in my wallet. Every time you fight for me, my groceries go up, my gas goes up. Every time you fight for me, inflation seems to have a problem. Every time you fight for me, I seem to be the bad one. So at some point, stop fighting for me. I'm done with it. I'll fight for myself. Just stop. And of course, Tim Walz is that guy that, you'll see the news reports. Oh, he's down to earth. And he's just, he was a football coach and he was a teacher. He's just a down to earth guy. The guy's a liar. He's one of those people that tells you what you want to hear and will keep repeating it because he knows he can't get out of that lie. And he'll smile at you because he knows that'll win you, and then he'll go do what he wants to do anyways. Now, the marches, you may say, oh, well, that first video, there weren't a whole lot going on. Well, let's look at this march. Look at this. This is a massive thing, the Palestinian-Israeli thing, and it really is a problem for the Democrats. Now, people are saying that they gave up Josh Shapiro out of Pennsylvania, because his name was Jewish. And I think there's a point to that. They're hoping they can kind of corral that pro-Palestinian vote. I don't know if they can. It may be a lot of people who give up their vote in protest. I don't know. They've really got to soft walk this. And of course, now what they're saying is, oh, well, Trump called Netanyahu and tried to scuttle a peace deal because that would be good for Kamala Harris, which isn't true. It's just not true. But they don't mind. They'll lie to you. Now, this one's interesting And mind you, I've got to talk over this stuff enough to change it so that way it can stay under common use. So please understand, I'm not just letting it run to let it run because I can't. But look at
Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial. And when he woke up, he made his own kind of history.
Before she goes on to the kind of history he set, isn't it interesting that this is all they seem to be able to talk about? And all she cares about is Donald Trump. He lives rent-free in her head, and I love it. Now, she's right. He is historic. What's he historic for?
Person to run for president with 34 felony convictions. As vice president,
Listen.
Kamala sat in the Situation Room.
Okay. All right. So those of you listening or those of you watching, if you can't tell, what they're saying is lock him up. They're chanting, lock him up. And if you notice, she is smirking up a storm on that. You see that smirk? That's funny because all y'all went crazy when Trump talked about putting Clinton in prison. And that whole lock her up thing. Oh, horrible. We've gone beyond the pale. This is awful. In my next clip, one of my favorites, this will get into that. But you notice that smirk. Yep, keep going, keep going. So we'll keep going. Just wicked smile. And people are cheering. They go crazy. And I cut it short. They kept going. Lock him up, lock him up. Now, of course, because Trump is a dictator, right? And I'll run this one, and then I want to ruin it for you, and you'll never unsee what I'm about to point out if you haven't seen this one. But let's go to a lesser-known Michigan senator. Let me get her name for you so you can look her up. Mallory McMorrow. She made possibly the most ironic statement of the night. So let's go to this.
Donald Trump would be able to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political opponents.
Go after his political opponents. Weaponize the DOJ. Let's continue.
He could even turn the FBI into his own personal police force.
Do you notice she paused? She thought she was going to get applause, and nobody said anything. Weaponize the DOJ against his enemies. Use the FBI as his own personal police force. You mean like raid your political rival's house for documents? No, that would never happen.
That is not how it works in America.
Oh, it's not. You tell me more. Go ahead, tell me more.
That's how it works in dictatorships.
Oh. This is possibly the most ironic statement of the night. To go to a crowd, and you notice this crowd wasn't really feeling it. Now, I don't know if it was that little lizard tongue thing she had going on or what, but they weren't moved by what you were saying, lady. They didn't care. Why? Because they knew deep down that it was what they were doing. Whoa. We're talking about DOJ, FBI going after political... Careful. You might be touching on some area that I'd rather not. Ironic. Now, to switch gears a little bit, there's something that you guys may have heard about, and I'm going to play video. This video sets in the truth and significance of what I'm about to talk about. And this is kind of beyond the pale on one of those. This is one of those things where you go, you're not coming back from that one. And I'm not even talking about votes. I'm talking about general morality, general common decency, integrity as a body, as a society, as a culture. What we've got going on the mobile van for abortions in the second. And you'll see this is video of people going in. Now, numbers report that there's about, so far, 25. There's probably been more. And people are pointing out, okay, if that number is true, that is 25 human beings killed at a political convention. This is almost setting up an altar to Molech and Sybil. Molech on the abortion side, Sybil on the vasectomy, sterilizing men side of things. And to have a political party handing out free abortions, what happened to safe, legal, and rare? What happened to the whole argument of necessary evil? We were told that you thought, well, it's a bad thing, but we've got to have it because otherwise back alley abortions. You're right. After Roe v. Wade got overturned, it moved out of the sterile medical office into the van in the parking lot. That's good. That sounds reasonable to me. I don't want to have a discussion anymore on voluntary versus involuntary in terms of you've proven what you actually care about is institutionalizing a grotesque practice. And you round it out with handing out coupons for hot dogs. Oh, get an abortion, get a coupon for a hot dog. I've got jokes with that. I'm not gonna say. This truly is insanity. And a lot of people were pointing this out right at the beginning, and rightfully so. This is an issue, guys, that Democrats, you might want to distance yourselves from. Because even the most reasonable, non-political person goes, wait a second. They're handing out free abortions at a political convention. That's an issue. Now, moving on. We've got Randy Weingarten, teachers union president, dictator. Watch her.
Or family leave, or health care, or housing.
At least she's
any of the things that are important every single day. We need to fight to get Kamala Harris and Tim Walz elected. Are you ready?
Her mannerisms, her movements, they seem to remind me of something. What was that thing?
Du jetzt deine Stimme ab. Wenn ja, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
I'm going to play them again because once you see it, you can't unsee it, right?
Or family leave, or health care, or housing.
Swinging of the arms, the passion, the energy.
That are important every
Du jetzt deine Stimme ab. Wenn ja, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
I can't help but make the comparison. It's too much fun. Bernie Sanders, continuing in the news of the Democrat National Convention, Bernie Sanders said the quiet part out loud. And this is something really important for all of us to pay attention to because the guy's kind of at that age where he doesn't care anymore. And he's saying the quiet part out loud. And props to him for saying it. Bernie, you rolled over, though. So you're not as tough and hard-nailed as you think you are. But
at the very top of that to-do list is the need to get big money out of our political process.
I agree.
Billionaires in both parties should not.
Okay. Billionaires in both parties should not be blank, blank, blank. What do you think he's going to say?
Be able to buy elections.
You know what? I agree. Billionaires should not be able to buy elections from both parties. Now, mind you, he didn't say Republicans, billionaires are buying their election. He's at the Democrat National Convention, and he's saying both parties, billionaires. So my next question is, Bernie, which billionaires are you talking about? Which billionaires are you talking about buying elections?
Including primary elections.
Notice the look on his face. And it was including primary elections, as in this thing going on. Billionaires paid for it. Proves that whole, we've got to preserve democracy. By killing it? You took somebody who nobody voted for in the primary in 2020. You installed her as vice president. You forced Joe Biden out and then quick installed her. And it seems to be that was the best way to be able to transfer all the money that Biden had built up for his campaign into her coffers. So they didn't lose all that. And now you have somebody who has not put out a policy platform on her website, who's very vague. And one of her first policy points that she came out with was copying Trump on not taxing tips for waiters and waitresses. Now, I'm all for that. My wait staff, service industry people, I'm with you. I stand with you in the resistance. Your tips should not get taxed. I don't think any gifts should be taxed. But why is it that was her first position and came out with it after Trump did? They want to keep it as vague as possible for you because that way they can shape it to be whatever it wants to be. See, this whole election right now, they engineered it. They put in their person. Because if you remember, for the primary, for this election, it was technically Biden who won. Now, what kind of challenge do you really have? Because they squashed other people. What's his name? Dean Phillips. They've harassed JFK Jr., or RFK Jr., sorry. Well, they really harassed JFK. But they harassed RFK Jr., which, mind you, he's had a bunch of lawsuits. He had like 9 different legal suits he had to fight. Guess who was bringing those? And so now RFK Jr. is dropping out. But guess what? It seems to be an established rumor that is most likely credible that he will be endorsing Trump on Friday. And that makes sense to me because RFK Jr. fought for Secret Service and they refused to give it to him. He fought to get on ballots and they were trying to fight to keep him off. They were swatting him away because they know he actually threatens the Democrat side more than he threatens the Republican side. You get plenty of Trump voters who go, well, RFK is okay, but there's too big of a distance, right? You're not going to get a whole lot of moderates that jump ship from hold my nose and vote for Trump to, yeah, RFK, he's my guy. He's a little too big government, a little too bureaucracy minded. Seems a little bit weird to people. But RFK Jr. is enough of an outsider, enough of a real guy that there are plenty of Democrats who go, I hate Biden. I can't stand Harris. The whole system is corrupt. They stole Bernie Sanders from me several times. I just want somebody real, RFK Jr. And so I really do believe they wanted to crush him because they knew he was a threat more to them than he was to Trump. Otherwise, they would have propped him up. They would have fought for him to be there at the debates, and they would have fought for him to be on the ballots. No, they know he's a threat. And it will be very interesting to see what kind of bump Trump gets because RFK Jr. slides over to his side. So I think this whole Bernie Sanders thing, Bernie coming out and talking about, hey, primaries are bought by billionaires on both sides. I don't disagree. And I'm glad you said it, Bernie. A, I wish more people were listening. And B, I wish you would have stuck up and said it back when Clinton buried you. Everybody complained about it. Everybody was mad. You had all the Bernie bros that were flying off the handle about the whole thing. Who'd they vote for? Most of them, Stockholm Syndrome. Turned around, voted for Clinton anyways because they hated Trump too much. You did get a portion that went to Trump. And I think there were a lot of people who were disenfranchised by the whole system, but they come back because they're like, I got no alternative. And Bernie, if you would have stuck it out, if you would have just blown the ship up, said, that's it, I'm launching the nuke. I'm telling everybody everything. Dude, you're at the end of your life anyways. Okay? Instead of sitting there in your mittens and your muffler, pouting in the middle of winter, you could have blown the whole thing to smithereens by coming out and talking about it, releasing a tell-all. You would have had to release your will with that. But I think you would have finally served some justice for all the people who put their hope in you. Now, I'm not you. I'm not in your position. I get it. So I'm not one of those ones that can say, oh, I would have. I don't know. I hope I would have. But I wish you would have. I wish you would have been upfront about it. And one of the things about Trump that I like is he'll drop those nuggets. He'll drop those nuggets. He'll drop those little, like, came out recently, talked about Obama was selling missiles to Russia. Meanwhile, this whole Russia thing, right? Because don't forget, even before Trump, Russia was always the enemy, which is a very convenient practice. 1984, anybody? This one's fun. I'm going to the next one. This one's fun. And I have to interrupt and kind of commentary because, the talking's not really important. But you ever played Where's Waldo? Let's play Where's Matt Walsh? So if you notice, there's this strange man wearing a red hat, a gray jacket, white shirt, beard, glasses, long hair. Now, if you don't know, Matt Walsh is coming out with a movie called Am I Racist? And I want to see this, and I hope you guys go and see it too. It's a... So one of the scenes they've already released, he goes to one of these workshops, aka struggle sessions, where white people are told how evil they are by somebody of a minority and how they need to be silent. And he goes off to the cry room, comes back, and he's looking like himself. And they're like, we know who you are, and you need to leave. And in his perfect fashion, he goes, so you're saying I need a disguise? So he ends up taking on the persona of one of the people he interviewed in the What is a Woman? This very effeminate professor, green or gray jacket and pulled back hair, glasses. And so he takes on this persona, and people were pointing out Matt Walsh was walking out. He has press credentials. He would be there. And I think it's a twofold. A, it's good publicity for his movie. Props to him for doing this. B, instead of him going and being harassed all the time because he's Matt Walsh, there's enough of a disguise that people are less likely to harass him and he can walk a little more free. Now, if you notice in this video, you'll notice Chuck Schumer's being interviewed by CNN. He goes past the security and comes back around. There he is. There he is. And he goes off. Now, it's going to pull back. And you'll notice, so they're showing the top. He goes back again.
Thanks very much, Scott. I interrupted you.
He walks back again.
He takes a cheap shot.
Turns around, and he actually walked back through as they're finishing the interview. Matt, open letter to Matt Walsh. Beautiful. I love it, man. I love your stuff. I love the courage it takes with that type of trolling, the type of sense of humor you have. It's a courage that not many conservatives have. Most of us are fairly uptight. We're quiet. You get the boisterous ones, but they tend to go too far. Bravo, sir. You thread the needle and you thread it well. Now, we also, of course, we're being very sensitive. If you didn't notice what that said, I'm going to back it up a little bit. Gender neutral prayer room. Now, when you walk in, there are prayer rugs. So what group do we think they are catering to? And my question to you is, what blue-haired, crazy, fourth wave feminist, non-binary, wearing a rainbow flag, decided it would be a good idea and a culturally respectful approach to create a gender neutral prayer room geared towards Muslims? Now, if you don't understand, it's because you are totally insensitive to culture. You are evil, xenophobic, racist, who has no understanding, and you're probably culturally appropriating. In Islam, they're supposed to separate for prayer. You're not supposed to mix the genders. But here we have a gender neutral prayer room, because that makes sense. This is the problem with the whole movement. If you're going to do it, at least do it right. They don't actually respect you. They don't care enough about who you actually are. You are a virtue signal for them, folks. Now, the Muslims are just using you too. LGBTQ, gender affirming, all of that, you asinine, ignorant fools who are coming out of your college ivory towers and telling us how great you are, how awesome you are, how cultured you are. They are using you as useful idiots. They have no interest in actually aligning with you. And there are videos of school board battles, even over in the UK, where stuff was going on the LGBTQ side, and that whole group was there protesting at the school. The Muslims were there protesting, and one of the lefties was looking at them going, no, we're on your side. You should be with us. We're on your side. We're for you. And the Muslims were going, no, you're not. You are not for us. We're diametrically opposed. And this is what these people at the DNC do not understand. And it's staring them in the face with the pro-Palestinian protests. They only use you as far as they can to get what they want. And I don't even begrudge Muslims for that. Do what you gotta do, you know? But at some point, the blue hairs have to wake up and understand you're trying and you're failing. And then when you get taco trucks banned because it's cultural appropriation, because the lady looks white that owns it in California. Real story, mind you, she lived in Mexico, studied up, and was there for a long time to create authentic, and she ended up coming back with these authentic tacos and started a food truck and loved the tradition, loved the food, the culture. She loved Mexico. She wanted to, and they shut her down because it was cultural appropriation. You people are fools. You're fools. And probably the last one that I've got for you.
During COVID, we supported small businesses and jobs.
Small businesses.
And Donald told us to inject bleach.
That's right, JB. Donald told us to inject bleach. Which is, even Snopes said, not true. And that was something that you saw move throughout this whole thing. And that's where we get this whole truth, honesty aspect. You witnessed a massive group of people spouting out lies. Let's go back to Biden. Biden used the very fine people thing again. He said there's very fine people. This is French. And even Snopes said, no, that's not true. Just stop. That's a hoax. And of course, Pritzker comes out with the whole bleach thing, which is not what Trump said. Trump was not saying inject bleach into your veins. He was talking about the fact that, well, we found that disinfectants can kill it. So if there's a way to get a disinfectant into he's thinking out loud. Now, I'm not trying to carry water for Trump, but this is one of those situations where, like, if you sit back and you listen, you can hear him thinking out loud of maybe we could, figure out a disinfectant for the inside, right? He was not saying go inject bleach into your veins and that'll kill COVID. That's not at all what he was. But the lie is better. It's more useful for this Democrat National Convention. And when you watch these people lie time after time after, and I'm not saying Republicans don't lie. This is not a tit for tat. This isn't it's wrong when they do it, but when we do it, it's fine. But I'm more, let's step back a step and look at the people they're talking to. You have a group of people who have been inundated, with the name Trump, hundreds of times over a couple of days. You're probably getting closer to 1,000 than you aren't. So they're inundated with his name over and 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 over again. Trump, 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 Trump. And then inserting constantly these justified lies, justification lies, right? So what's a justification lie? You're telling the lie to justify your position. And so these lies, these misdirections, I get it, it's politics, all of that, but you have a whole group of people who are being swept up in that. And you create a caricature of the other person that is not actually there. And when you do that, and pay attention to this for your own life, take everything you hear about other people with a grain of salt. Because what happens is a person comes to you and says, so-and-so said this and this and this, and so-and-so is horrible. Grain of salt. Perfect example, you will have somebody come to you, and let's say they've been through a lot of jobs, and I have truly been through this type of scenario. Person comes to you and says, oh, that place, they fired me because, everybody was against me and they hated me and they were always talking about me behind my back and blah, blah, blah. And they finally got rid of me. They forced me out. And then they go to another job and guess what? I had to quit because everybody was against me and they're all talking about me. It was horrible and they all hated me and my bosses. And then they go to another job and my boss is evil and my boss is mean and I can't stand my boss and my boss this and that and that's it. And my wife will tell you, what's Mike going to say? Lowest common denominator. What's the lowest common denominator? If the person's coming to you and telling you all this stuff about other people all the time, the lowest common denominator is it's actually them with the problem. Bring that back to this. We look at somebody looking at these people and lying to them constantly, but they won't take it with a grain of salt. They won't say, I wonder what the other end of that story is. And you've watched people move to the Republican side because they're like, this doesn't make sense. Somebody is literally Hitler. And so they start doing their research and they're looking into the news and they find, wait a second, that's not what he was doing. The bleach thing, that's not what he was talking about. Very fine people. No, he condemned neo-Nazis. He condemned them in that same exact speech. We're going to march on the Capitol. Peacefully make our voices heard. That gets wiped from the record. The making fun of disabled journalists or whatever, not what happened. And so when these people actually go back and they look at the original video and they watch the whole thing in context, they realize they've been duped. And the Harris campaign, proven now, were altering headlines in order to make themselves more palatable, make themselves look better. When you get a group of people who are flat out pathological liars, and my personal opinion is that's Waltz and that's Harris, both of them, pathological liars believe that you won't look around behind the curtain. And it's always been amazing to me that people, when there's video record, still try to tell the lie. Biden does that. Clinton does that. So many of them do it. They tell these fanciful stories as though it won't ever get proven. And some people say, oh, well, they're just rambling and they didn't realize what they were saying. No. They're telling a story to try and buy you in, try to bring you in. Waltz is connected, and he's oily because he knows enough not to say flat out. He walks around it and knows you're going to make that leap or make that assumption. When he talks about carrying weapons of war, what you're going to think is he was in war. What he's actually saying is, yeah, I got my standard issue military firearm. When he talks about his military service, he doesn't tell you where he was stationed and what he was doing. And then points at J.D. Vance and says, well, he wasn't really in combat either. Being in Iraq and being in Italy are two very different things. And then he talks about IVF and how the Republicans want to get rid of IVF, and he and his wife had fertility problems. And notice, he doesn't flat out say, well, we did IVF, because that's not what they did. But he talks about we had fertility issues, and so we're very close to the IVF thing. Now, that could be the case. But you notice, never clearly defines the process that they took. Just lets you make that assumption or that connection. Oh, okay, they must have done IVF too. Well, if that's what you want to believe. And this whole thing was kind of a crazy show. And they have more tonight. It's a crazy show because you've got that mixture of entertainment. They've got big names performing, big names doing delegate stuff. It's an entertainment thing. And they're drawing people in with the entertainment thing. And they know there's a good number of people that are there. They're like, oh, well, Harris, but I get to see Lil Jon. I get to watch performances. I get to hear music. And then they get on stage and they tell them about how evil, awful, horrible Hitler Trump is, and how great they are for everybody, and how they're there to help you out. And they're buying people in. And so I'm going to end it here. I'm going to watch for more to come out tonight, and we'll see what happens. But rest assured, guys, I will say, now we don't tend to say, this is the last election ever, but this one, I think, scares me more than any others because of how blatant it all is. And that goes back to 2020 and how organized they were. And Time magazine itself ran an article talking about the shadow campaign to get Biden elected. They haven't given up on that. And they're moving swiftly. They're doing it well. They're organized on all of this, and they're well funded. And then you look at the candidates that are up, Harris and Walz. And I think what concerns me is there's no policy positions. She's never been a person of her own convictions. Think back. What convictions has she really had? You might be able to argue that at least Obama had some convictions. We may not agree with them, but they were there. And the only convictions that I can seem to draw away from Walz is this guy loves China. Had his honeymoon at Tiananmen Square. Went to China repeatedly. I don't know if he still can, but at one point could speak Mandarin. Seems to have a love for China. And then is suddenly thrust into a position of decision-making and policy and where to lead the nation. And what do we get? Price controls. Interesting. Raise taxes. We'll see where it goes. But I hope you guys got a laugh or two. And some of these clips, they're good. They're fun. But feel free to go back through. Do not forget, we have our fundraiser drive. Please, by all means, go to theselfevidenttruth.com, sign up, become a torchbearer. You can do a one-time donation. If you want to do a pledge, please reach out to us. We are driving for the end of the year. And we're so grateful to all of you. Now, if you're in Texas, we will see you in September. We're going to see you there. It's going to be great. I'm really excited. It's going to be the best ever. So I love you guys. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.